Welcome to episode 57 of Popcorn Square. I am your host, Kage, with
Neff.
And Buttons.
And today we are going to ask you, what is your grade? What is your grade of movies of 2024? We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Beetlejuice here, too. So 2024, guys, you've heard us talking about the movies this year. It's been a real hodgepodge. It's been a really rough year, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't really have a lot of big, heavy hitters so far. But we're going to go around the table. We're going to talk about, what we've seen and what we want to see moving forward for 2024. So right now, as we're recording this, we are in September. This year's been pretty rough, in my opinion. It's been pretty rough for movies. 2024, let's see, the earliest thing I remember was Beekeeper, which I watched.
Your one in the water, the lake one,
or
the pool?
Night Swim.
Yeah,
Night
Night
Swim.
Swim,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember starting off the year with those, and I'm going to do my best to hit all the movies that I saw, but let's be honest, we've all seen a lot of movies this year. Yeah, and I recently watched Beekeeper again, and I was very happy. So that definitely cements it in my brain. I'm like, okay, that wasn't just a thing, an experience, a theater experience. Like I really enjoyed the story, so that was good. And I also watched Night Swim again yesterday. Definitely not a buy for me. That's not going to be one that I would buy. But yeah, what are some movies that come to mind? Some that you really enjoyed and some that you really hated. I'm getting a smile across the table here, folks. You can't see. We'll get that one out of the way. Yes, absolutely hated Argyle. Kind of a dumpster fire, that one. But we have many contenders for that. Madam Web. Borderlands really hurt my soul. Yeah, I need therapy because the movies have been awful this year. But we did have some good ones. We had Dune Part 2. Let's not forget that.
Inside Out 2.
Inside Out 2 was great.
Despicable Me.
Yeah.
4.
Yeah, for real. What else?
Well, obviously Beetlejuice, because we were talking about that later.
Yeah.
But as far as the other movies that we had come out, I think, I did enjoy Argyle, even though Kage really hates it. But, we also had some halfway decent ones come out on streaming as well. They were kind of goofy. There wasn't a whole lot of substance to some of them, like Ricky Stenicki. But, I think that, obviously Romulus, everybody here loved Romulus. And, as far as the sequels go, this year we've got a lot of heavy feature on the sequels. And even, we'll talk about that later, but we're also looks like we're going to be seeing a lot more of the sequels in the future. There's not a whole lot of original content when you really look at the lineup. And for the movies coming out later this year, you're going to see some things which are going to kind of look like they're trying to recapture some of our superhero, I guess momentum, between DC and Marvel. Deadpool, obviously. Everybody here loved Deadpool, Wolverine. Yes. That one was a good sequel. So, it's not to say that every movie was horrible or every movie was, not worth mentioning. But I will say that this year for me kind of felt like it all kind of sticks together too much to where it becomes like this haze where you don't even remember some of the stuff because, I don't know, maybe you're trying to block out the bad memories of the ones that you watched that were awful.
Yeah, that's fair.
But or just because it feels like a continuation of a lot of the same things that you saw in 2023, because there's so many sequels, you're like, oh, did this one come out, or was it, was it 2023 that I saw that movie, or was it 2024? So, you watch some of these movies, and because you have competition with streaming, I think that makes it more challenging too, because you're like, well, I didn't see this one in theaters, but I did watch it on streaming, or I saw it, or it was purely streaming and I forgot that I watched that movie, because you've got so much content, you've flooded so much content, that it's hard to keep in your brain process like, oh yeah, I did see this movie, or oh yeah, that I forgot how good that one was, compared to the other. Like even myself, I find, when I'm trying to score things, I'm like, well, yeah, that movie was good, I enjoyed it, but was it better than or as good as this other movie? And so, on my scale, I try and think, to myself, not just like right after I saw it, but kind of a little bit later after I've kind of gotten the initial excitement or nostalgia or anything like that out of my system, before I give it like an actual good score. Because, even I know, speaking with Neff, we were kind of talking about how, you might watch a movie the first time and you've got that kind of, that thought in your brain of what you're going to give it a score, but when you go back and you watch it maybe a second time, you're going, it wasn't actually as good, or you know what, no, this is solid, it holds up, like still I'm still jazzed that I got to see what I saw in the movie, or it's still delivered, like even after coming back and watching it a second time, it's still just as good as I remember it, versus like building it up in your head and saying, oh yeah, that movie was so great. I know for me, like going and watching movies with a group of friends, and especially when you're in the audience, and if the audience is really into a movie, it feels like it's so much better. Like
Yeah,
just
I
the
completely agree with that.
experience of it. If everybody is excited, if everybody is, dressing up, or everybody is laughing in the theater, or, getting spooked at the same time, or, they get to see everything, you're experiencing at the same time, and it just builds the intensity.
You're
and
talking about the
energy.
energy in
Yes,
the room, in the
yes.
theater, when everybody, when you hear people laughing,
Yeah.
like
you're like,
those
oh, that is
reactions.
clever, or,
Yeah, it
or
really,
exactly.
it
really
adds to the experience.
And I think, watching it at home, some of the jokes and stuff probably fall a little bit more flat, because, it's just like if you're sitting in a studio audience watching like a sitcom back in the day, they held up signs that said applause. It's like,
totally.
oh yeah, here's the time where you're supposed to joke, or, here's the joke and you're supposed to laugh right now. And it's like, you might not have found it funny at all, but the cue cards are telling me to laugh. So that must mean that this is the funny part, and in the theater, you kind of can get that, because sometimes people pick up on things faster, or you didn't realize like that was supposed to be a joke, but other people start laughing. You're like, oh yeah, that is funny, and so you'll kind of laugh along, just because, you're in the group and you're feeling the same energy. And as far as my rating for 2024 goes, in terms of like the movies that I've seen thus far, to be honest, like if I'm looking objectively at all of the movies that have come out, I'm gonna say it's like a B minus. Like, I feel like, yes, there's been some highlights, there's been some good points, but there's also been a lot where I don't know if it's just gimmicky, a cash grab, they're not trying hard enough. Hollywood isn't trying hard enough, or they're trying too hard and it's coming across as, like, oh, we threw all this money at it, so you have to like it. But you're sitting there going, but I really don't like it. Like, you guys did something and it just didn't hit right. It didn't land the way you thought it was going to land. And here we are, stuck with this movie that we were super jazzed and excited to see, and it now is kind of a letdown. We have wild cards that, we'll talk about here off mic and say, oh yeah, that might be my wild card for this year. It doesn't look particularly interesting, but you never know, so I'm going to give it a shot, and those movies, I feel like if I go in and I sit down and I watch them and they're actually halfway decent, I feel better about going to have watched it than I would have if I had, been like, oh man, I am super excited for this movie. And then you sit down and you watch it and you're like, man, this was such a letdown. Like, now I'm disappointed. I feel like I wasted my money. I feel like, this wasn't worth my time. And all of the advertising and all of the hype surrounding it was, unjustified and, feels almost like a betrayal. Like Hollywood, why are you doing this to me?
Good point.
Neff, how about you? What's your score?
So my grade for this year is a C- or a C flat. So we do have good, we have good films, but they've been kind of washed out by all the bad films that come out. And obviously, a lot of this is subjective, guys. So I might like a film more than Buttons likes a film, and same with Kage. But for the most part, we've seen, we have seen a lot of movies come out that didn't hold up. But we do have some movies that do hold up. And the thing is, when you have those movies that come out that are good, they make significant impact, and there is a gap in between those and the other movies. So we kind of had a list of films that we were very excited for. We had top 5, 10s. My top 5 has done pretty well. Not shocked by that. Pretty solid films all the way through. I have one more to go on my list, and that's Smile 2, which I think we're all looking forward to at this table. But like I said, overall, I got to give the grade a C- or a C so far this year. Buttons kind of touched on the slate for next year. There is a slate for next year. I don't know if it's an official slate, but we do have some titles there that are going to be officially releasing. And a lot of the slate looks like sequels and remakes. So if anybody felt weird about 2024, if you thought 2024 wasn't that good for movies, next year might be even worse. Don't know 100%. Some of these sequels and remakes may be good. We don't know. But typically when we start moving in that direction, you're starting to see a lot of rehashing, a lot of weak storytelling, etc. So we'll just have to wait and see what 2025 brings us. But sometimes you do have to do a little bit of digging. There are some gems there. You got to look. Sometimes there's stuff on Netflix. There's films that don't get a lot of coverage. Beekeeper, that was a movie that didn't get a ton of coverage. Came out in January, action film. You don't really see that much. The film was a decent film. And we talked about that heavily on our first couple episodes. But things like that, they pop out. So you guys got to be paying attention. And it also depends how much you're in the cinema, too. Everybody's busy and stuff like that. But there are some good ones out there that did not get a lot of press. And then the big blockbusters, obviously, they did get a lot of press. Because to have a blockbuster in this era, you do have to have a lot of press and marketing that goes into that. There's two sides of this. We've talked about this on the podcast before. You got to have a good product, and then you have to have good marketing. And then, of course, word of mouth helps your movie get to those big box office numbers. But like I said, I'm giving it a C right now. We'll see what happens towards the end of the year. We still got about 3 months left in the year, so there's a few movies that I do want to see coming out. Very excited about those. Smile 2 is going to be October. Right before that, I do want to watch Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. That's coming out towards the end of this month, September. And then Nosferatu in December. I'll be watching that on December 27th because I have things to do on Christmas. But those are 3 that I am really excited for going into the fall and the winter. I am going to be skipping out on the Joker. And I talked about that on the weekly, why I'm not going to be watching the Joker too. But hey, hopefully the movie does well. I think it will probably do well. The first one did well. Will it repeat the box office numbers that the first one did? We will just have to see what happens with that. But like I said, my grade is sitting at a C so far. We want to know in the comments what you guys grade this year, and we want to know what movies you've seen. But we're going to be moving on to the next topic. What you got, Kage? What's the next one there, bud?
Well, actually, we talked.
Let's talk about what you guys are excited for the rest of the year.
So, okay. So I got a few here.
Okay, go ahead.
I got a few here. I said Venom. I like the first Venom movie. I still need to go out and watch the second one.
Yep.
It needs to come out on a streaming service I have. Worst case scenario, I might just rent it off Prime.
You gonna watch Craven?
That's kind of on my radar.
December release?
Yeah, I might give that a look. Joker, I'm about 50-50 now.
Yep.
Before I was really gunning for it. Yep. Now I'm like, the more I'm reading, I'm like, I'm not so sure. So that's a wild card for me. Smile 2, that is a big one. absolutely going to be seeing that. Gladiator 2.
Yep, I forgot that one. I will be watching that.
I want to see that. I don't care what
Good
anybody
pick.
says about the trailer. The music may not have been desirable, but I still want to see what's going on in that universe post Maximus. And then I'll throw it out there, the Return to Silent Hill. We don't have a confirmed date on that yet.
Yeah.
But it wrapped up filming in July.
You have been doing your research on
I
that.
have been doing my research. They wrapped up filming in July, so they're doing post-production stuff. So hopefully we'll see a trailer soon. I'm thinking if it doesn't come out this year, it'll be early next year, but we'll just have to wait and see for that. And then I'll throw another wild card out for you. Hellboy the Crooked Man. Okay, I can talk about that. A lot of people I know really enjoyed the Ron Perlman Hellboy. 1 and 2, good movies. They're good time, great effects from renowned effects artist Guillermo del Toro. But this isn't him. This isn't Guillermo del Toro. This isn't Ron Perlman. I'm seeing it out of curiosity, basically. You know, and if I don't go to the theaters, it'll definitely be a stream. So we'll have to wait and see for that. Yeah, like, Buttons, what movies are you looking at for the remainder of the year? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we did already touch on some of the ones that I'm excited about. The only other one really that, well, I guess there's more than one, but one of the ones that's been on my radar pretty much all year, and I finally did get to see like an official trailer the other day. And I think the trailer's been out, I just haven't really seen one until recently, but that would be Wicked, and it's part 1.
Okay.
Which they're not advertising it as part 1. Like when I first saw the announcement for it, it clearly said part 1, but in the trailer, it does not identify it being part 1, but I'm still fairly positive that it is only part 1 of, and it's, you know, a Broadway show that they're making into a movie, just like they've done with many of the Broadway you know, shows. I don't know that they needed to make it into 2 parts. So that's going to be kind of interesting. But they made some interesting casting choices as far as, you know, Elphaba. I'm not 100%, like her voice sounds great, like don't get me wrong, but like there's different scenes where you see her where, you know, yes, she's painted green and you know, it's hard to tell her age, but there are other times where you're like really getting into it and you're like, okay, you know, did we not have anybody who's got a nice voice that was a little bit more age appropriate? You know, even Ariana Grande is kind of pushing the age belief on this. You know, they're supposed to be teenager kind of characters. And so, you know, not to be ageist or anything, because I'm not saying that she can't play the role. It's just kind of you know, suspension of disbelief when you see her in certain parts where you're like, okay, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be like under 20? But I still think that overall it looks like it's a good cast. It looks like it's going to be a strong movie. I just hope that it doesn't end up being like Cats, where you can't stand it, like it's just awful.
Yeah.
But it, you know, watching the first preview for it, it looks like it's going to be pretty solid. And so that is one that I enjoyed when I was in high school and went to see it live as well. You know, performed live. So it's definitely on my radar, and I'm hoping they don't botch it, because, you know, I want to like it just like I like Chicago, just like I liked Rent. You know, they do make some of these Broadway productions into decent movies. I'm hoping this is one that it's gonna be decent. So, as opposed to, you know, what we've seen with like Cats and some of the other poorly done. You know, give me another Greatest Showman, give me another Les Miserables. Like don't make it Cats, please.
Now, let me ask you this. So you said something that I didn't know. So I won't lie. I watched the original Wizard of Oz. I remember that,
Okay.
obviously. But the But yeah, I didn't know that this could be a part one.
Yeah,
Or
so.
part two. Like,
No,
I
this
didn't
is
know
part
that-
one, yeah.
Okay, because like I remember when Dune came out, for example, this year,
Mm-hmm.
or like I'm sorry, not this year, 2020, 2021, Neff.
Yep.
I remember hearing about the movie, and they said that it was going to be a first half of the movie, but I
Right.
didn't notice it said part one in little tiny subtext. I didn't notice that. Like, I had to watch it again to pick up on that. So I'm wondering if there's something like this, because I saw the trailer for Wicked when I saw Beetlejuice. I'm like, oh, okay, this
Right.
might be one to look out for.
Yeah, and like I said in the trailer, it doesn't specifically say part one anywhere. But when I had seen it listed on all the movies coming out for the year, it did say part one.
Okay.
And the only thing that I fear with that is, if people are gonna go sit down thinking it's the full length movie, or and then they get to the end and they get left on the cliffhanger, you're gonna be all upset because they didn't specify that it was part one.
Just like Dune, people got mad. It built up, and it just ends.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm fairly certain that this is not gonna be the full length movie.
Okay.
Or the full length production. It's gonna be the first half of it, which, again, it's definitely got enough material, and these are based off books originally, and then, was made into a Broadway play, or musical, and that's been a long-running show as well, and it's launched a lot of careers in terms of, the leads, because that's, gosh, what is her name that she did the voice of Elsa in Frozen?
I don't know her name, but I know exactly who you're talking
But
about.
she was the original Elphaba, and Kristen Chenoweth was the original Glinda.
Glinda the Good Witch.
Yeah.
I believe I remember that just now.
Yeah, but anyway, actually, I think it's funny because, I think she was up for an award for Frozen, and they kept mispronouncing her name when she was getting up on stage. At least I'm pretty sure that was
Yeah.
her name is kind of unusual. It's not like crazy unusual, but
While Buttons is looking up that, I just want to say one I did forget to mention, Nosferatu. That's one I want to see, but I don't think a lot of people are going to see it in theaters because it comes out on Christmas Day. Kind of a weird strategy there, Hollywood. Maybe release that on Halloween, just saying.
yeah.
But
That would be ideal.
Oh, you know what else? A lot of people I know that are gonna want to see it, and I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's gimmicky kids movie holiday, but Red One. That
Oh,
one's coming
with
out.
The
That
Rock?
could be a funny one.
That
Yeah,
looks like it'd be a good family
yeah.
movie. I think it'll do well. It's got a good cast. It looks like, you
Chris
got Chris
Evans, The
Evans.
Rock.
Yeah, The
Dwayne
Rock
Johnson.
and, pardon?
I'm saying his real name.
Oh, yeah. And,
Dwayne Johnson.
and what's the other guy's name? The older guy, the one that's playing Santa Claus? He's been in a lot too.
I'd have to see. I don't remember from the trailer.
Yeah.
have to see.
It's, Spider-Man guy.
You got to get all the names, but
Yeah, Idina
Yeah,
Menzel is the
Frozen girl.
Frozen girl. Yeah, she was Elphaba in the original cast of Wicked.
Dude, I'm getting PTSD from that movie. Listen, I had a little quick story. I had to help my friend and his family move, and they put their kid in a hamper, baby, put him in the hamper, and sat him in front of the TV watching Frozen. I had to listen to Let It Go in 8 different languages for hours.
Okay, so the other two big names that are in there are J.K. Simmons. That is, he was.
Oh, I know who he is.
Yeah, everybody knows who he is. Just not his name, apparently. And then, of course, there was Lucy Liu in there, which is nice, because I haven't seen her in a long time in anything, really.
Yeah.
So, at least nothing as brand as this
Yeah.
is, as
Okay.
mainstream.
Now, you two saw a movie this weekend. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Beetlejuice.
Kage, you want to
Beetlejuice. All right,
go
summary.
tell the audience your thoughts?
Okay, so Beetlejuice. Yeah, so I saw it yesterday.
Friday?
Friday? The days are bleeding together, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I saw it Friday, thank you.
I saw it yesterday.
Well, fine, I saw it Friday. Yeah, so I went into it, and I'm gonna cut to the chase. I really didn't like it. I gave it a 5 out of 10. There were redeeming qualities. I kind of think of this in the same way that I look at Borderlands, okay? I did not like the movie, but there are things I liked about the movie. First and foremost, when the movie starts up, I don't know how to pronounce it, Geffen Studios or Geffen Productions or whatever, it showed the same logo. I completely forgot about this company for 30 years. And then here it flashes the logo, and they didn't even update it or anything for New Days. It was the exact same logo from the 1988. But then they started playing the redone
Music.
Beetlejuice theme, and I was sitting in the theater like grinning. I'm like, 5-year-old me is so happy right now. So I thought that was really cool. I thought it was really cool that they brought back much of the old cast, bringing them together. Whenever you do that with a sequel, it really helps with continuity. So I appreciate that as well. I recognize the environment, the red drive-through bridge
The
thing
tunnel.
that they have in the town.
Yeah.
So I like that. And
Well,
Michael.
they brought back basically the whole miniature set that they had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the town.
And they brought back so much. They brought back you got Tim Burton doing his thing. They did a lot of practical effects. They had some of that stop motion animation,
Claymation, yeah.
stuff that he is known for. I really enjoyed that. But that's about as much good as I can say about it. I feel like the story, it was okay. There was too much of a focus around the father, and I don't want to give away too much of the movie, but I will say that the actor, he wasn't in the film for good reason. He convicted pedophile, so they killed off his character, but all you had to do is say a 1-sentence, 2-sentence thing and say, oh, he died on an accident or this
It
happened or
would have
whatever.
propelled the story together enough for what they needed.
For what they needed, right. And I was not expecting them to keep going back to him, showing him, referring to him over and over and over all the way up until the end of the movie. And it's just like, oh, okay. And then some of the jokes were kind of rehashed a little bit too much for my liking. I did like the cast, though. Jenna Ortega coming in as Astrid, Lydia's daughter. I thought she did great. I thought Winona Ryder coming back as Lydia, all grown up with some issues. That was great, and it makes sense. Wow, I'd be pretty messed up, too, if I had that experience, with Beetlejuice back in the day.
Well, and her whole life, she can still see ghosts. So.
Right. So they pick up that trait from the first film. She can see ghosts because of her macabre nature, you know what I mean? And so I like that they kept that consistency. They had Danny DeVito in there for a bit. That was awesome.
A little cameo.
The little
for him.
cameo. They had Monica Bellucci coming in as Dolores. And her introduction in the movie was very cool. So highly recommend you guys look out for that if you go see it. But ultimately, I didn't get enough. I feel like the story was a little bit convoluted in a way. The original story was, to sum it up, is like this couple dies and they don't know they're dead, but they figure it out pretty quickly, but now they're trying to get people out of their house, living people out of the house, okay? And they can't do it on their own because they're ghosts, can't be seen. So they employ Beetlejuice thinking he's going to help them, but Beetlejuice is out for Beetlejuice. He's going to do what Beetlejuice do, and he's going to sit there and cause mischief. And his whole thing is, I'm not really here to help you, I'm just here to help myself, okay? And then that's his whole shtick. But he does good things selfishly. I don't want to say not quite
For selfish
anti-hero,
reasons,
for
yeah.
selfish.
He always has an ulterior motive.
He always has an ulterior motive, whatever is self-serving, but it's not in a dark, villainous sort of way. There's a comedic aspect to it as well. And the story it had a small cast, but it worked. And in this one, there's so many characters, both old and new, that you have to spend 15, 20 minutes per character telling what Lydia's been up to, who is Astrid, what is the mom up to, and who is this, I don't want to give too much away, but like telling so much about, and then Beetlejuice comes in, and you learn a little bit more of his backstory, which I thought was cool, and his connection to Dolores. I thought that was cool. But you have so many stories within stories that when you try to put it all together, it's just convoluted. And when you get to the end, the climax of the film, it's just, it doesn't quite deliver. Because you showed all these things, because at the end, it just kind of rushes everything together. And we're going to give you this, and you're just going to accept it.
Oh, wait, here's the end. We need to hurry up and get to it.
20 minutes.
Right. That's exactly what happened. And so I'm not invested in the characters. When I saw Michael Keaton coming back in the suit, the hair, the face paint and everything, I was overjoyed. Because he's still Beetlejuice. He still has it. Okay, he was still able to make me smile. You can see his antics. He still has the gruff voice or whatever. Like, he can still do that. So I thought that was very cool. Seeing Winona Ryder coming back, I'm like, yeah, that's about how I would imagine her. So they played their characters well. I wish I would have liked to see more of Dolores. I think she's kind of the boogeyman in the film. She's kind of in the background. You see her a little bit, and then she finally shows up, and she's gone just like that. They take they take her out of the scene. Like, she's not in the movie as much as I would have liked,
Interesting. Buttons, what do you have to say about this? And then I'll ask you guys a couple questions afterwards.
Yeah, so I did see it, went with a couple of friends. Everybody seemed to be having a good time in the theater. We had people dressing up. I think, when you're watching it in theater with a group, it's much more enjoyable, this movie. I think if I had been sitting at home watching it, like streaming it, or something to that effect, I don't think I would have got as much enjoyment out of it, because you kind of get that energy when you're in the theater, when you're watching with a group of friends. Everybody's laughing, everybody's having a good time. Even with all the jokes that were in there, some of them were cheesy, some of them hit on point perfectly. I think, you definitely had some comedic writers involved in this. The main thing, and I agree with Kage with this, is the story itself. It seemed to me like, and part of this, I think I know, is because they've tried to launch this before. I want to say back in like the 90s, they tried to do a sequel, and it kind of fell flat because it was all over the place. It was like a weird Beetlejuice goes to like Bahamas or the Hawaii or something weird like that. And so that never kind of like came to fruition. And I'm wondering if there was some remnants from that original script that kind of got thrown in here, or if it was just two different writers kind of trying to throw the story together, and one person was pushing really hard for Dolores's character to be the main villain, and somebody else was pushing really hard for another villain. And of course you have Beetlejuice himself, which most people, when they look back at the first one, they're like, Beetlejuice, he was only in the movie for like 20 minutes worth of screen time. But every time he was on the screen, he took attention away from everything else. He was the main draw. And I feel like in this movie they did the same thing, where yes, he's not in the movie, every scene. He pops up throughout the movie randomly, but when he's on screen, he's very entertaining. He is the main focus. And and he's doing his hijinks. He's doing his little things that make him stand out and make him that lovable character that you loved from the first one. Some people say it's kind of like, more like they were just trying to appease the audience or, the fans or whatever, fan service. I don't think that's true. I feel like that's what his character was in the first film. Like, he's there, he tells his one-liners, or he does his little weird shtick. As far as like, there's a scene where, he's doing like therapy and he's like, spill your guts, and
I did like that. And that was in the trailer, folks, so that's not a big spoiler.
So it's not a spoiler, it was in the trailer. So he's like, I'll go first. See, I'm willing to put in the work, and it's cheesy, but at the same time,
it's him.
It's his character and it works for him. And it's really like, that's what you wanted with Beetlejuice to begin with. And for me, anyway, like, I enjoyed his screen time when he was on there. Even he has like this, like, from the first film, we know he tries to marry Lydia in the original film. And then in this one, they kind of bring it back to where he's still kind of semi-obsessed with Lydia. Like, he's got like an old, exactly. He's like, the one that got away, like, I'm still trying to like come back and marry her kind of thing. Like, he still has hope for the relationship, even though there's such a big age gap. And like Winona Ryder's character even mentions that at the end. She's all like, sorry, we've got too much. There's 300 years or whatever. Yeah. It's just too big an age gap. And little jokes like that and things that pull over from the first movie I really enjoyed. I think, they recreated some scenes. It was definitely more musical than the first one. I mean, yes, the first one had music. Some of the music choices I wasn't, like, in love with, but at the same time, they made it work for the movie. So I can appreciate that too, pulling some really random, song choice out of obscurity and pulling it forward and being like, yep, here we go. We're gonna make this work for the movie, for the scene. So I can appreciate that as well. I gave it a 6. I feel like originally I was sitting there debating on whether or not it was going to be more like a 6.5, but ultimately, because of the way that the writing went as far as the main storyline, I feel like 6 is generous. There was a lot of really good things to the movie. Character-wise, I think they tried to introduce too many just because of the storyline. Mm-hmm. You had too many new characters that were competing with each other. And you could have introduced them as long as the main plot line was like cohesive and that was it. Like, they weren't trying to pull too many different stories into it. And I will say this, for those of you who have watched the original film, the original was, overall tone of it was darker. This one was more, I wouldn't say light, it's just more kid-friendly, it felt. It felt just a little bit more kid-friendly. And I know I've seen some reviews on there that said it was not a kid's movie whatsoever. But honestly, if you've seen, Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like his Willy Wonka version, it felt like if he had pulled right from that movie and started doing Beetlejuice, because it felt like there was a lot of very Oompa Loompa type energy in there with Bob. And then there was, there were a bunch of different characters, but they all looked like the same character.
Yeah.
And then, even the gimmicky thing with the cop with
William Dafoe.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe's character. He plays like this police kind of cop guy, but he's actually an actor in real life originally. So his character was funny with, what it was, but it wasn't necessary to the story. So while I enjoyed seeing him in there, his character wasn't really needed at all to propel the story forward. It really,
I agree with that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Kage, you gave it a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Buttons, you gave it a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Rotten Tomatoes has this movie sitting at a critic score of 76%. rated fresh, and then the audience score is at 82%. So, maybe the kid-friendly spin did kind of help with that. It's catering towards a different type of audience. Where, like you guys say, the original Beetlejuice, it was catered to a more adult audience. And I think at that point in time, Tim Burton was doing movies more. He was catered to like an adult audience until he got to A Nightmare Before Christmas. Because he had Batman 1989, which came out after Beetlejuice. Remember, he had Beetlejuice 88, I believe. Then he had Batman 1989. And then we have your favorite, Button's Batman Returns 1992, which actually got a lot of hate because they said it was not kid-friendly at all.
Wait,
People were like, why did they put this movie out?
Was that Batnipped?
No.
No. That's George Clooney. That's 97. That's Batman and Robin.
Oops.
And then Edward Scissorhands was also,
Edward Scissorhands.
So,
not necessarily
yeah,
a
so-
kid's film.
that was
So-
90.
Yeah, so
1990.
I'm starting to think with this one, maybe he wanted to go to a different direction.
Well, like I said, that's why it felt it felt like Willy Wonka-esque. Like, you've got that same kind of lightheartedness to a lot of the more serious scenes. They did have some really, I guess I would say with Dolores, there was a couple of darker scenes where you're like, oh, there's some adult content here. But for the most part, even like when they're speaking on grief and things like that, it didn't take it super serious, like, and mainly because of Catherine O'Hara's character, like, she's very superficial person, like, for the most part, even though she pretends to be deep, like, her character was always very, like, for the image and that kind of thing. She doesn't have a whole lot of depth to her character. So even when they were trying to have, like, a serious conversation, Rory, the one that's dating Lydia in the movie, he tries to like talk to Astrid and be like, oh, if you need somebody to talk to about your grief and everything, like they throw a joke in there. He's like, oh, I just lost my grandpa too. And he's like, when? It was like 30 years ago. And they're like, wait, what? How could you have just lost him? Because he's trying to be like, oh yeah, but I still feel the pain of it, like it was like the child
Let's
in me
connect.
or whatever.
Let's-
And he's,
So this is my question for both
It's
of you
very
guys.
cringe.
You
That
answer
was
first,
very
Kage, and then you answer Buttons, because you did bring up something that I thought was interesting, Buttons, and you said there was some type of sequel. So my question was, do you think there should have been a big budget sequel, or I should say prequel to this film, but a sequel to the original Beetlejuice, tying in the new characters, and then this movie come out after? So it doesn't feel like it's a bunch of people just thrown into the pot and you don't know why they're there or their backstory. Do you think you
I
could have
don't-
had a movie explain how they come into the fold and then have this movie to follow that up? So it doesn't seem so
like there should
bloated?
have been
I don't
something
know.
in there.
Yeah, I
before
don't know
this.
how they would do that. Like,
Just thinking about the question.
Yep.
But I will say I would be open to watching something like that because they had so many new characters,
Right.
and I don't know who the villain is. You know what I mean? Because you have Dolores coming in as the big bad introduced early on, but then they talk about
If they had done a prequel for Beetlejuice that was about Dolores and Beetlejuice's character, like how they came to be, I think that would have been better than throwing her in
that's
this
a more
movie.
that's a more focused story.
And then you
that
could
I
make that
think-
adult centered.
Yes.
Yeah, like and like the original one.
And it could have tied into the first movie as far as like
Yeah.
how he lost his job and became Beetlejuice.
Now that is something
that would have been- that
go
would have
to
been a
theater
good use
day
for
one
her.
for. Yeah,
and then if they threw her in as like a little cameo in this movie, then it could have just tied
Right.
to this
Because I just
one.
feel like you needed a diving board here.
Yeah, she
Instead of
could've-
it just being,
yeah.
oh, here's all these people, and you're like, who's this? Oh, okay. Instead of
That's
that, you could have had something in front of this that could have built that up. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you go into this film, you're not wondering who that is because you already know who it is. They just fit into this film.
If the story had been, because basically this story is kind of centered around a lot of different factors, but if they had taken this and said, okay, this story is about Lydia going back, she has a strained relationship with her daughter, and they even made a couple of jokes with Catherine O'Hara about how she's like, oh, you treated me like this when you were a teenager too, so I'm loving this, and she even makes a joke, saying something to the effect of just like, well, what happened to that little goth girl who used to annoy the crap out of me,
Yeah.
And because Lydia kind of has like this, progression through the story where she had kind of become kind of meek and, uncertain about her, her life and her role or whatever. And because she was struggling so much with Astrid, it kind of compounded, because Astrid is essentially still grieving the death of her father, even though that had happened years ago. But she's kind of in the same headspace that Lydia was when, the first movie happened, where she's like, oh, I'm living with my dad. I have this horrible stepmom. And she's like, I don't really, life is unfair. I'm a teenager and all angsty. And so Astrid kind of plays that same similar kind of character. She's like, oh, here I am. I have to put up with my mom and I'm a teenager and angsty, and with the introduction of Rory, she's like kind of the way that Lydia was with the stepmom. So Rory's like trying to be kind of that same character for her, where she's like, I don't know what to do with this guy. Like, I can't believe my mom's dating him. And, I think if the story had been focused around that, and then she's introduced to that guy, and he was the focus of the story, like that, just that relationship of, they're there because the grandpa died, and now they have to rebuild their relationship, and Beetlejuice is in there to help them.
There's
patch
problems
things up.
that they there's problems that they have to solve.
Right.
We have to come up with a reason to get them back to that house.
Which was
We
the
have-
death.
Well, right, but
that-
there's too
that
many
solves
things
it.
going on, is what I'm saying. They need to pick one, okay? They need to pick a thing. So the first objective is, how do we get people, we have to come up with a plot point to get the people back to the house. 2, we have to come up with a reason for why we need Beetlejuice back. Because in the first movie, they don't know about him, and they learn about him, and they're like, he's bad, he's got a history, don't do it, and they do it, and chaos and hilarity ensues. But in this one, we have to come up with a reason why we need him. And it's like, if you would have made Lydia's guy,
You mean
like-
Astrid or Rory?
Rory, like, see, that's what I mean. Who's the bad guy? Is Rory the bad guy? Is the guy a bad guy? Is Dolores a bad guy? I don't know who the villain is, but you need to pick one, narrow it down, make it more focused,
I don't
because
think Rory was ever supposed to be the bad guy, though.
Well,
he was there taking advantage.
well,
like-
he was, but I don't want to give away too much of the movie. But like, there's 3 like bad characters, and when I say bad, I don't mean like
Evil.
overarching evil. I don't think anyone is over evil in. It's just lighthearted. That's what the original one was lighthearted.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice wasn't a demon.
You're just saying it just lacks focus.
It
needs
lacks-
to be focused on one
It
person.
lacks focus. You give 3 antagonists, essentially. I say that lightly again because I know Rory is not. I'm trying not to give away too much here because that would be too easy. But yeah, you have 3 people that you don't like, and it's like, okay, who's the main person to be watching out for? And at the very end, they said, oh, we're just going to throw it all together, and ending. And I'm like, what? What was that?
Yeah.
That's my problem with it, and I still watch the first one with a smile on my face from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Wow, I think you guys had a great breakdown of that film without giving too many things away. I don't think there was really any spoilers in there. I think you guys had some solid input on what you thought about the film and some honest input. And I really like that because I know both you guys went in with high hopes. So when you do watch a movie with that expectation and it doesn't do what you expect it to do, it's sometimes hard for people to be honest and say, hey, this wasn't what I wanted to see. They could have did this, they could have did that. But you guys were very honest about it. That's going to wrap up this podcast, guys. Audience out there, like, subscribe, comment. We asked you to comment before on just what you think about this year. But if you've seen Beetlejuice, comment on that. Let us know what you thought about that film. Also, throw a grade in there since this whole episode is about grading the year and grading films. So yeah, do that. Share with a friend. As always, be safe. I am signing off with
Kage.
and
Buttons.
this is Neff. Later.